Happy day everybody. I'm R. Vatsala Mirnaalini, Psychology Program, Department of Social Science, M.O.P. Vaishnav College. I'll be presenting you the topic Decoding the Role of Priming in Social Psychology. And before we get into the video, let me just ask you a quick question. Have you come across any offers that says it lasted for 2 hours or any discount that says it lasts for 2 days or 1 day, something like that? Now, connect this to a proverb which says that fools rush in whereas angels tread. So, do you get a spark about this topic? Right, exactly. We are going to talk about something called as priming. You might ask, what is priming? Priming is basically an unconscious action that you respond to a cue in the environment. So let's get into the topic, and before we go on to the topic, let's connect priming to social psychology. Why are we emphasizing priming in social psychology? So I said that priming is the unconscious action that we do to a response in the environment. Now, social behavior are influenced by priming, meaning people, how they buy the product, how they become consumers of the product are highly dependent upon how spontaneously they react to an advertisement or a marketing trend. So we need to look into the method how priming is done, the decision behind priming, the thinking process behind priming. So let's go deep inside the topic. And I present to you these objectives which we will be dealing in the video, and I'll break down each of these objectives and present to you. Let's begin with the first objective, which says that how people make judgments consciously and unconsciously. Now look at these two images, and I want you to try to give me an answer for the last missing word. Now you have a missing letter word for picture 1 and for picture 2. Now, did you find thinking effortlessly or was it spontaneous? Keep thinking about it, and I move on to the second picture. I have a puzzle for you over here. Read through the puzzle and try to find out the solution for this puzzle. Now, how do you find? Do you think answer to this puzzle is difficult than the one that was in the previous slide? Is it? Did you try to grab a pencil paper to solve this puzzle or something like that? Now, this is what we have been discussing. What is unconscious thought and what is a conscious thought? Picture 1 was mostly pertaining to unconscious thought, which is spontaneous and effortless. And picture 2 is much about the conscious thought, which is more effortful and deliberate. Now, this process of thinking is explained as two systems of thoughts, system 1 and system 2. Basically, by system 1 we mean the fast thinking, which is the unconscious thinking, and system 2 is the slow thinking, which is the deliberate thinking. And this system of thought was given by Daniel Kahneman. Now, let's try to relate this system of thought with priming. And I move on to the second objective, which is role of priming in making judgments. Precisely, system 1 thought is what we are representing for priming. So it is more unconscious, spontaneous and intuitive. And you might be wondering, most of the time the brain is something that is deciding with conscious thinking, very meticulate and all that. But we also have to understand that brain is also concerned about unconscious thoughts, which is spontaneous. You might be saying that maybe I don't do something like that, I think about it before I take a decision. But just consider an example wherein you have a reel that is in Instagram, and you try to, you see that there are many likes for that reel, and it is a trending video, something like that. So you identify that it's a social behavior that is represented by people to like the video. So it's a spontaneous liking that has made it trending, right? So we find that people without thinking, with being very unconsciously liking the video, represents how intuitive they are. So we try to connect this spontaneous action of people with priming, and I'll explain more about this in the third objective, wherein before we understand what exactly priming, the process behind it, we need to understand the characteristics of an intuitive consumer. Why? Because remember I said social behavior is influencing people to go for a product, isn't it? So definitely we need to understand what kind of a people go for such intuitive behaviors. So before we go into how priming decision is done, the thought process behind priming, let's understand the characteristics of an intuitive consumer through objective number 3. So who is an intuitive consumer? Intuitive consumers are basically cognitive misers. So meaning they don't want to put in efforts to proceed with the decision, and they want to make an effortless decision, and they want to make as simple as possible, minimal resources that is used to before making a decision. And this particular picture over here represents a guy watching a television, and you can see that he is, while he is watching, he is hungry to eat something, and so he is ready to order through Swiggy. So very impulsive decision that he is making. So we can connect this way, that this person is, as soon as he gets the stimulus provoked, he wants to do that action, do that in action. So he is very spontaneous in making the decision. This is exactly what we mean by priming. He is going for the product unconsciously, and in order to proceed further, these are the basic shortcuts that we can understand how cognitive miserliness works. The characteristics of an intuitive consumer. They are efficiency, novelty, familiarity, and processing fluency. Let's look at these one by one. By the first one, which is efficiency, we mean that our brain works in such a way that it tries to minimize the efforts that we are putting in. So I can explain this with an experiment that was given by Roy Baumeister. Here he has divided the participants into experimental group and control group. In the experimental group, the participants were asked to eat radish and solve a puzzle, and in the control group, the participants were asked to eat a chocolate chip cookie and solve a puzzle. Now, what are the findings of the experiment? The people who ate radish were finding it difficult to solve a puzzle, and it is mainly because that as they are going through a torturous task, that is eating the radish is a torturous task, and they decline the willpower to proceed further to solve another torturous task. So that is precisely what we mean by efficiency. Like, the brain is working on to reduce the number of resources minimally, and trying to quickly react so that it can help with the unconscious decision making. And for those who are eating the chocolate chip cookie, it's a easy peasy, because they find it very easy to solve the puzzle, because they are happy to eat something that is sweet and sugary. So that's pretty much efficiency, and how our brain is trying to become more efficient in choosing a decision. And this is pretty much what I explained, that our conscious brains are lazy controllers of our intuitive evaluations and decisions. And I move on to the next shortcut, which is novelty. And just imagine that you walk into a room where you find a blue cup on the shelf amidst some ordinary cups, and you tend to like the blue cup a lot because it's more attractive and it's more beautiful. And this is exactly what we mean by novelty. So what is novelty? It is the function of a prediction error, or which is otherwise known as expectancy violation. So we understand this term in a way that we can relate to our brain process. Always our brain works in a way to predict what comes next. So it's always expecting what's next, expecting to predict the future. And when something that doesn't happen as we expected, it becomes an error. So in our case, the blue cup stands as an error of prediction. We never expected the blue cup to exist over there. So it's something new, something novel, something unique, and so we find attracted to the blue cup. So this is another component of priming, that something that is very attractive and unique makes the person to decide quickly about without thinking much. So, and the next one is familiarity. This can be related to a concept called mere exposure effect. Here we understand that more a person is exposed to something very similar, they get to like the object a lot. So they are more familiar with what they see frequently. So that is familiarity. And the last one is processing fluency. Here we try to understand this concept by relating to minimalism, meaning our brain works in a way that it tries to look at the text or any message which is very simple and elegant. It doesn't want anything complex. So it restricts minimally, so it's easy to process. So that's process fluency. We are more attracted to a message which is very simple and very relevant, right? So that way we find priming works in an unconscious way to select those messages which are very simple to understand. Now, having done these 4 characteristics of an intuitive consumer, let's try to relate to how exactly the person makes the decision. So that's very crucial. Like, we have been looking at the definition of priming, which is the unconscious action, spontaneous action, and we have been discussing this theory behind, that is, what do we mean by unconscious thought and what do we mean by conscious thought, system 1 thinking and system 2 thinking. And then we slowly moved on to understand the characteristics of an intuitive consumer, and we saw the 4 shortcuts involved in that characteristic. And now we are going to see how they exactly make a decision. So you have an example over here, brand A, which says that a snack you have seen in ads before with bright packaging and a familiar logo. Brand B, a new brand with plain packaging that you don't recognize. Which brand will you choose? So obviously people will go for brand A. Can you think why? It's because it is more familiar and more attractive. Remember familiarity concept? So that's how priming works. So people get attracted to something that's more familiar, fluent and efficient. And what exactly is happening before we understand the decision part? So you understand that familiarity is one component that makes a person to unconsciously decide. Now this is working on the logic called associative activation, wherein the brain has neural circuits which connects to the different parts or the ideas that happens behind the unconscious thought. So all these ideas are cluttered and it tries to focus on one particular cue that is happening. So which is the familiarity or fluent, anything. The particular cue, I'll explain this little later, but then understand that it tries to focus on one particular cue and try to declutter the rest of it. And this is given as an example over here, which is associative activation. An example for that is, just read the following words, which is just like peanut butter and choke. The minute I told you these 2 words, you get varied amount of thoughts in your brain. It could be scenario 1 wherein you imagine a person who eats a peanut butter and starts choking, or scenario 2 where you are eating a peanut butter and choking, or scenario 3 where you imagine a person who has allergy to on all the faces and allergic to peanut butter. So a lot of combinations of images comes to your brain and you are trying to decide over something that is more relevant. So unconsciously there are a lot of things that is coming into your brain, and the priming happens such a way that it chooses just one particular cue that is more related, and that happens through a computational model of mind which is given by Schröder and Thagard. This will be my objective 5, and they have given a beautiful theory which says that the networks that we have inside our brain has representational system which are loaded with symbols, ideas and images. These symbols, images make a person to decide upon rationally and to solve a problem. And I have a very good video to understand.
The goal of this activity is simple. The team needs to use the rubber band to stack all the cups into a pyramid.
You want to put it? Yeah, sure. Okay, everyone release. Wonderful. And
this one?
let's grab this
Okay,
fun
do you
one
want to
here.
just like nudge it over? Okay, yeah, and then
Never mind.
drop.
Release.
Okay, cool.
And how about we nudge it over a little bit?
Yeah. Okay.
All right,
now-
moved.
Woo,
Okay.
look at this
Okay,
guy.
we want to try to get farther down.
Let's go all the way to the bottom.
Which
Okay.
will make it so
So
much
like let it
easier
place
in
it
the
down
end.
and then
Let's straighten as much as possible. And
It works!
yeah.
How exactly this computational model of mind works, I'll explain the video. That is, you see a group of team members trying to hold a cup using threads, right? And the main objective of the team is to take the gold cup and put it in the center. Now, as they are trying to move the cup unanimously, they find that there is lot of pressure, uneven pressure for the cup. Each person is putting different kind of a pressure, different force, and each thread is at a varying distance. yet they work unanimously to balance the cup and put it in the center. That's a gold cup. So this is exactly what is happening in priming, and that is explained as constraint satisfaction. That is, though there are a lot of constraints, so in the video there is a different force, different pressure, different distance, though there are a lot of distractions and everything, the brain is focusing on just one goal, which is the cue that the priming is focusing on, which is quite unconscious. So that's constraint satisfaction, and I can explain that with an example soon. And this is a paper that's given by Schröder and Thagard, and you can read through when you find time. And this is the image that I was talking about, which helps you to understand priming in a very better way, a very realistic example. So you can see that there is a smiling can of a Coke, and the motto says open the happy can. And we all know that Coca-Cola is something that is very bad for health, and something that has chemicals, something that is having a lot of calories. All these are constraints, all the negative factors. But still, the cue over here is something that is happy. So the minute a person looks at the message, he is motivated to buy the product because he finds using the product makes him more happier. So definitely he nullifies the rest of it and focuses only on the message, and so he goes for the product. That's how priming works. So priming is unconsciously going towards the product that is giving a very strong cue, and this cue could be based on efficiency, familiarity, fluency and novelty. So, and this is another example where we can understand pro-social behavior, how it can be done using priming, and they have used urgency as the cue. So, when a person politely asks, he might not get the response, but then if he is in an urgent way that he is stressed out, then if you ask for some help, then he might be getting the help. So that way priming can work if urgency is also combined. So what exactly do we understand from the entire video is, we as social psychologists should be aware of how priming works. We need to spread awareness about priming, and we need to make people not buy spontaneously without thinking much. So always they have to think before they act. So education and training can definitely help in making a person develop slow thinking, accurate thinking, and go for what they need rather than what they want. So next time when you try to look out for a pizza advertisement and you tend to get the urge to buy pizza impulsively, just think twice before you buy. So that way you are not becoming a victim of priming, but you are becoming something where you give conscious thought some relevant work and you proceed with the decision. So with that, I hope this video was enlightening, and thank you so much for patient listening.